Are you a real estate investor looking to sharpen your skills or a newbie looking to become one? You're in the right place. Welcome to Where Should I Invest? Real Estate Investing in Canada with your host, Sarah Larby.
Karen, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks so much for having me.
I'm excited. We met at one of the programs that Aisha, who's co-hosting this with me today, and I attended. It was wonderful. It was called Beyond Boundaries, and you were the sales expert, and you had so many great insights. And we said, why not, have a podcast and share that as well with the audience? Because even though we're real estate investors, we're also entrepreneurs. We're also looking for opportunities to, grow. And with growth, that comes with sales. And you don't have a business, whether it's small business, large business, if you don't have sales along the way. So tell us a little bit about your background before we get started, if you don't mind.
Sure, absolutely. I'm delighted that we met in the program. Just quickly, the Beyond Boundaries program is sponsored by Hall Tech, and it was our 5th year doing it. And so I've been there for all 5 years. So it was just so great to, actually the 3 out of the 4 are original folks. So it was nice to be able to continue delivering value, as you both are here to attest. So kudos to that. Just a backstory. I started in sales without giving my age away almost 25 years ago. And it's kind of all I knew. I graduated with a biology degree. I was going for pre-med. And through a random, I guess, events of different decisions. One of them, after school, I was a flight attendant, and I was like, I kind of chose life and adventure and fun. So I left the desire to go into medicine, but I remember my father being in sales and him always saying I'd be good in sales. I thought, well, if I'm going to give it a try, why not in a environment that still means something to me? So in healthcare. So I kind of blended the worlds of I didn't want to be a doctor, but I still wanted to be in that hospital patient setting. And so I started a career with medical devices and software and stayed there for 20 years. And in 2018, I went on my own and I launched K2 Performance Consulting, which is a sales training coaching company that basically, I'm the person that I didn't have growing up through corporate. And I could probably count on one hand how often I received sales training or sales coaching. And I really always took pride and saw it as a profession and wanted to continually to elevate and invest in myself. And even when the companies were like, we don't have the budget, I bought it because I just knew indirectly I'm bettering myself, and indirectly that is going to yield more deals. So I'm now that person that I kind of never had.
That's amazing. And now you're teaching startups, entrepreneurs on how to do it for themselves and for their team.
Yeah, I do kind of, if you look at it, two streams, the entrepreneur kind of founder, small business route. And I also do corporate. So I do sales teams, just like teams that I was part of. And a lot of the companies I work for now are actually in the medical device space. So that's my lane, that's my wheelhouse. But also, even though I have over 20 years of sales experience, becoming an entrepreneur, in 2018, you still had to sell a service. And so despite having all these sales experience, people are like, oh, it's so easy for you. I'm like, no, it wasn't. Because you're selling yourself now. I think, working with enough female founders, I know that, we attach our self-worth to our sales performance. I know we get in our head. And I did those things. So all my learnings kind of went out the window initially. And then I was like, Karen, pull this back, better. But you have to almost make those mistakes because you're betting on yourself. You're putting everything on the line here and you're walking away from safety. And so I think that initial is like, to recluse, to kind of be a bit fearful of putting yourself out there. But then after a short while, I turned it all around. And so having gone through that, I'm more empathetic to others who are in those similar situations, and I can see it. And there's a relatability because I've been there. So I know what you're feeling. I know those reservations. I know what it's like to hold you back. And then I also know what it's like to say enough is enough. Like I know I bet on myself and just like plummet through the fear, like just put one foot in front of the other and just move through fear with action. Even if you don't feel comfortable, even if you don't know what you're doing, just take a step.
That's great, Kelly. Thank you for sharing that, Karen. You touched upon something that I wanted you to expand on, which was self-worth was based on sales performance.
Yeah.
Now, that follows you along in any career trajectory you go. Your self-worth is always based on your performance. So can you talk a little bit about how you talked yourself out of that, or how you were able to look at that in a different eye that allowed you to not be captured by it, but still the fire lighting you along the way?
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for that, Aisha. And it's a great question. And I would say the majority of my corporate sales experience for almost 20 years, that was me. If I didn't get a deal, it was like I messed up, and I took it personally. And that is so damaging. But I think because you're in corporate and there's so much information inundated, I wasn't really working on myself as much as I do now from an awareness, a spirituality, a coaching standpoint, that I was kind of reactive to it. And now that I realize what the damage is, I also am a mother now, and I realize that these kids of mine are looking up to me. And so when I'm telling them something but doing something different, that's complete, I'm a phony. And at a certain point, I also thought, like, even if this didn't go my way, it's not for lack of effort. Like, I did everything within my ability. And I think that's the two questions we have to ask ourselves is what is this within my control? And am I allowing it to give meaning to something that's not true? Like, is it true? And so I just think, at a certain point, you're like, I don't want to be so hurtful and damaging to myself. Like, I believe in myself. I love myself. And if you don't have that within you, like, how can you teach? How can you inspire others? So there's a certain point that it was just like, I don't want to beat myself up anymore, because a lot of times I did good. I did the best I could be. And sometimes, a lot of people I coach now, they're like, well, what if it doesn't, what if they don't want to buy? That's very possible, but they may never buy anyway. And so is that like, and we'll never see behind that curtain to go, these were the people that had complete indecision. They were, wrapped around the axle of indecision. They didn't have budget, or they were just tire kickers. And for us to carry that weight, it's too much. So I would say, to wrap this up, is it's a choice. And you have to choose like happiness and just levity, and saying, I will do the best I can do with what is in my control. And I have to let go of the rest for my sanity, for if I have kids or people that support me, because I feel like the ups and downs and the dark and the light is just so heavy that you just think, I can only do with what's in my control. Like, I'm human, and you just let the rest go.
Yeah, absolutely. Do what's in your control, and it's a choice. I love that. So a lot of the listeners are real estate investors, or they're small business owners. They are maybe starting out, their realtor career, or perhaps they're starting a property management company, or they might be mortgage brokers. So there's lots of small independent folks I think that are either self-employed, or they're starting a little bit of a company. And obviously, getting yourself out there is important, but also bringing in potential clients.
Mhm.
What are some of the, maybe for somebody that's just at that stage where they're a new mortgage broker, or they're a new realtor, or they're like, I have this great idea to, create a course to help others with, whatever it might be, real estate related or not. What are
Mhm.
some of the initial steps that you think somebody could start with to really get themselves out there and, find some initial clients?
Mhm. I think, and anyone that I coach will know that I'm a broken record when I come back to this line, but it's know what problem you solve, first of all, because a lot of times, whether it's a course, whether you're a mortgage broker, or you're a realtor, you have to know what problems they are having, because you're the solution. And too often, small business owners go out and they're pitching, we are a mortgage broker, we are a florist, we're something. And it's like you're selling a solution to somebody who doesn't know that they have a problem. And so how can you get that acknowledgement or that awareness in your potential buyer that, yeah, God, this sounds a little bit like us. Or, if we continue down this path, we might be in that situation. And that's where we have to sell the problem, and get them to realize, that things could be different, things could be better. And a lot of times people say to me, but Karen, we don't have this black and white solution where it's like, this is the problem. And that's fair enough. But all you're looking for is, think about in social media, people are scrolling, like we're all commoditized. So how can you get them to stop for a moment and just say, huh, I've never considered it that way. I haven't come at it from that angle before. That's interesting. And if you can get them to pause and be open to what you have to say, that's an opening. That's a win, because that then allows you to have a conversation. And that's all you want. And I think a lot of people have misaligned expectations, that when I'm coaching them and they say, I'll say, what's the goal here? Well, to close a deal. And I'm like, well, that's not going to happen on the first call, if they have a long sales cycle, but the goal should be to have a conversation and to then explore, get your buyer to potentially disarm, understand how they're getting the job done today. If they are a mortgage broker, like, who are they going to now? Where are they getting this information? What is lacking with their current provider? And maybe they don't know. And so this is where you can just disarm them by sharing an insight, sharing a story that's emotional, and just gets them to pause and say, wow, I've never thought of it. We've always done it this way, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's the right way. And so once you've stopped and invited them to think differently, maybe you've taught them something about themselves, about their business, they're like, this person's different, because people are getting inundated with pitches, with messages, with chat GPT, with everything, that if you can stop and make them think, and perhaps teach them something, you become memorable and you stand out amongst all the other stuff that's out there. They're more likely to listen. So I would say the first thing is you have to be selling the problem, but you also have to know, like, who are these people having the problem? Because you're not going to be for everybody. And most people have this wide net, and they're trying to be everything to everybody. And the challenge is your language and your messaging is on the surface. It's like me saying, hey, all these entrepreneurs, does everybody, are you looking to make more money? Well, yeah, we all are. But how can you ask a question that's really niche down? So, entrepreneurs in Southwestern Ontario, are you looking to attract, rental properties in, whatever, just really niche down, whether it's rental properties, whether it's duplex, whether it's something specific, that you have this really niche audience that language resonates with them. So not only do you have the problem they're having, these are the people that you're speaking to that are having the problem. So you're really aligned. And a lot of people are afraid of that, because it's this, scarcity mindset. And they say that the riches are in the niches. Because if you're everything to everybody, you're just on the surface, and you're beige. You're not breaking through. And now it's like, how can you be a laser beam versus a flashlight and really break through? And part of that is really knowing your audience, knowing their problem, but getting them to acknowledge the problem. We can go in and say, this is your problem. This is where the art and science comes in. How do you get them to acknowledge? And so that's where we tee up questions, share an insight, share a story. The light goes on from them. I can't tell you what your problem is, because then I'm a salesperson telling you. But if I can invite you to look at your business through a different lens, through a story where you see yourself in it, you might go, huh, that is possible. And I think that's where a lot of people, they struggle with those kind of three areas.
Lots of great points there. And I want to go back to a few things, because you mentioned, even in our program, stories help a ton, right? Stories sell, and being able to draw that emotion. And that's the stuff that you remember. Like when you see somebody speaking on stage, facts and facts and facts, you're not really going to retain, but the stories are the ones that you remember. Those are the ones that you remember, like, that create emotion within you. So stories are huge. And I do like what you said, that the riches are in the niches, because you can't be everything to everybody. And so what is it, right? Whether you're a realtor, like, what are you specifically, whose problem are you, like, helping, and what is your niche? Because I think that is going to really be a key part, especially, like you also mentioned, social media. Everybody is always just scrolling and scrolling and scrolling. And, I think it's a big marketing opportunity, but it's also much more saturated than it's ever been. And I don't think it's going to get any better anytime soon. Are you finding that there's social media platforms that are better? Are you finding that it's the good old fashioned cold call outreach? Like, what are some, opportunities, marketing or sales wise, that you're like the best options right now that you're seeing in the market? Or, maybe it's a combination of a few different things. What are you doing to find those clients? Is it social media? Is it cold calling? Is it door knocking? Is it referral, word of mouth? Like, what are you seeing out there?
Yeah. Happy to share a little bit about that. Before that, I just want to go back to the stories, and absolutely, stories sell, facts tell. And like you said, like realtors, it's such a saturated market that they do all. I am kind of painting them with the same brush, but they look and they sound alike, right? And so it's like, if you can just be that 1% above, and it could be social media, it could be a referral, it could be something different. But right now, like 80% of buyers don't see the difference. And so what can you be doing? And that kind of dovetails into the next answer is multi-channel approach. So there really is no one and done, you should be doing this. Depending on your audience, if you are selling into the B2B space, business to business, LinkedIn is typically your platform. There's over 1 billion users there. If it's B2C, it is Instagram, Facebook, even TikTok now. So things like that. YouTube is huge. But I think that the whole thing is, when you're trying to, especially back to your original question about new business owners, or if you have a side hustle, you're just trying to generate some initial traction, you have to A/B test. You have to see, where are my people, but what channels are they responding to? So you're kind of fishing, and you're saying, okay, I'm going to start with an email, then I'm going to follow up with a phone call, I'm going to leave a voicemail, I'm going to text, I'm going to connect with them on LinkedIn or Instagram or things like that. So the recommendation is a multi-channel approach, so that you're touching them a number of times, because now the latest, I think it was up to 13 to 15 touches before you get a response. And so again, it's not what one are you doing. You have to be doing all of them, but you have to really be creative. And so even back to one of my good friends is a realtor, and I'm going to say 15 years ago, she had this little plant, and they planted these daisies, and they went door to door to door. I mean, she's got a thriving business now, but that's what worked 15 to 20 years ago. But something like that would work again now, because post-pandemic, there's that face-to-face, it's different, it's unique. So I would just say, like, the more creative you can get, the better. But really meet them where they're at. And so know where that is. And if you're, if you're looking at industrial warehouses, that's maybe in the B2B space. If you're looking at families, maybe that's in Facebook or Instagram. I would also say, to de-risk it, referrals and any kind of warm lead is always the best way in. So leverage your network. Many opportunities that I had, I'll reach out to somebody. I'll go on LinkedIn Navigator, which I would recommend if you're a small business owner, and find out, who my connections are, who I'm connected to this person that has connections to where I want to be. And I'll say, hey, Sarah, I see you're connected to these 3 people. Would you mind introducing me? And I'll write it up for you. I'm going to make it easy. I'm going to give you some context. And then really all you should be doing is hitting send. And so even if the person doesn't want to, it's not the right time, it's not the right fit, chances are they will take the call because of, the affinity, the obligation, because they know you. So I would say low-hanging fruit, absolutely leverage your network, ask for the referral, but do the work for them, so you're not, damaging that relationship. And one other area I would add is video. Video is huge. There's some people not on it, which I can't believe. But again, when you think about the storytelling, it's the part of the brain that drives loyalty, that has no concept for language. It's just purely emotion, is the reptilian brain. And that's through emotion. So when you can put your face on there, you can convey emotion through your tonality, through your body language, through the spoken and the unspoken. It's a complete game changer versus a text or, just text that's, there's no tonality, and it's so easy, like you further commoditize yourself. So even if you put on your camera and did a 30-second video and sent it away, a few things, they see a person behind it. They know it's not a bot, because that's what people are saying right now. Is this ChatGPT or is this a person? But also they can forward it on. So it's got reach. And if you're selling in the B2B space, all of a sudden that one video now has been viewed 30 times. So when you do get on a call, when you do get a face-to-face, it's not, hey, Aisha, it's, hey, how you doing? Like they feel like you've already met them, and that's the power of video, even though you haven't. There's many of my clients I've been working for years, and I'm like, we never met in person, but we have such a strong relationship, and we haven't met in person.
Yeah. No, I think that's true. You have to be more creative, and you have to take those extra steps. And I know you sent us a video, and I remember like watching it, and I was like, oh yeah, it did have the impact that you were sort of looking for. And so as Sarah mentioned, some of the sectors within our listening group, and as you mentioned, it's a very saturated market when looking at a lot of mortgage brokers, realtors. Those are a lot of our listeners, investors who are trying to grow their own independent companies. What's your take on other traditional methods of marketing? So you'll see people on billboards, on the back of buses, on bus stops. Like, is that something you talk about with your clients? Is that any type of marketing that you recommend, or are we sort of past that and that's more of the old school ways of doing stuff?
You know what, to be honest, I can't really answer that. I think it's more of an A/B testing and looking at like, where are your audience at? Do you have the budget to do that? And just start, like, a lot of people are trying way too many things. Try one thing with one, like I would say, first of all, segment your audience. So you're not painting everyone with the same brush. So if you are a realtor, can you segment it into geography? Can you segment it into houses? So, 1 to 1.5 million, 1.5 to 2. And then you try different things. So with the higher ones, the higher budgets, does video work better because perhaps they want to trust you more in a higher ticket purchase. So it's just trying and seeing what works, what's incrementally moving the needle. But I wouldn't try 3 or 4 things, because then it's hard to pinpoint like what's actually working and what's not. But I think it's, again, back to meeting them where they're at. Where are they? If your buyers are looking at billboards or looking at buses, like, yeah. But if you don't have the budget for that, maybe, running a Facebook ad, maybe doing what you ladies do, and getting an in-person, event together where you have local sponsors, and just getting that face-to-face so that you're getting people out. And I think also is managing expectations, that this could be a longer sales cycle than you anticipate, but it all starts with a connection and building a relationship and disarming them so they start to trust you, that when the time is right, it's not who then, it's definitely, I'm going with these ladies, but it takes time. And I think you have to surrender and release a little bit and allow people to feel safe and feel comfortable without pushing, your agenda, your timeline down their throat. And I see so many people do that, and it's just sheer desperation. And so it's like, how can you manage your channels while still being truly buyer centric, and the minute you drive too much urgency or make it about yourself and you're pushing, they pull away. And so it's not even a question of what channel should I use. Like, you've burned all channels at that point.
I think content and like value add in content over a very extended period of time helps. I mean, this is, the podcast, essentially, I didn't originally have any goals with it, but when it started in 2017, it was about, creating something for Canadians that want to invest, because there wasn't much back then. And then, Aisha and I did a little bit of a YouTube show, but I think the more free content that you have that has high value when you are looking to create courses or find investors, that they come much more organically for that than, if you just went out and been like, I'm looking for this investor that, wants to come in on this deal. I think that has to happen more organically, especially with the securities and there's obviously some legalities around that stuff, but the more content. And you went back to, the creating of the events. The creating of the events is an opportunity, obviously, for everybody to get to know each other. But I think it also establishes us as, somebody that's creating opportunities for people, right? And I think because we are, in a sense, maybe we created the events for that authority for the event creation or the podcast or whatnot. I think, over time, people feel like they know you and they can trust you and they like you. And so I think, like you said, it's not a one and done thing. I think it takes a long time to cultivate some of these, but value add is huge. And events, are definitely a way to go. But I think also just thinking outside the box, right? Anybody here could be creating some webinars. It doesn't have to be events, right? It could be webinars. It could be, short little 2-minute YouTube videos, or, different things like that, to just, again, share the value and just being able to, build an audience for that piece. We also have a salesperson. We actually have 2 that are out there making B2B calls and booking meetings. And I guess, like, if somebody is at that stage, right, whether they are hiring a cold caller or hiring staff, what are some things that, you would recommend once you have staff when it comes to sales and sales training and, getting other people to help you with the sales piece of things?
Yeah. I'm happy to share that. I just want to go back quickly. You shared a lot of valuable information there, Sarah. And one of them is, again, how to bring people in. Is content is huge. And the one word, if you think about what's the most commonly used word in sales, an overused word, but it's value. And so if what you're sharing is valuable and you are sharing it was ungated, and it's like a drip. So every week, so I would recommend starting a newsletter. If you can start a newsletter, even if you're starting with 3 people, start building it. But every week you're depositing, you're giving something with no ask. And it could be, what are the top 3 challenges that, people in your ecosystem are facing that you have the answer to. So they're reading it, they're educating themselves. They start in their mind associating you with, you're credible and you're the trusted advisor for this space. So I would say if you can continually drip and deposit when it comes time for a withdrawal or an ask for a meeting, for an introduction, you've already earned it. So it says deposit, deposit, deposit. And then when it comes for the ask, you can do it. And so I would say a lot of, this trial and error on all these channels, but can you get some data back from your prospects and say, what do you enjoy? Like, what's helpful? What, by reading this, by attending this event, by me introducing you to this person, what were you now able to do? And that's value. And if it's like, well, not much, you have to think, okay, I need to sharpen my pencil here because I'm doing a lot of work. It's a lot of expenditure, but it's not yielding any result. And I think a lot of people don't go back and check in with the voice of the customer and say, what is helpful? What is valuable about this? And maybe their processes have changed and they're like, well, what you send us, we actually don't use that. I need to know this because then I can have a conversation and say, well, what would be helpful? And I feel people shy away from that, but that's customer experience. And Gartner had a report in the last few months, and they said buyers place a higher priority on the buying experience than they do on the product or the cost of the product. So the way in which you engage them, you deal with them, you answer their unasked questions, you meet them where they're at is way more of a priority than how much they're going to spend and what they're going to buy. And so how can we really lean into that and be customer focused and deliver value, both asking them what is valuable and is what I'm doing helpful? And if not, then I need to, revamp and retweak it. So that was my one tangent.
No, that's great. I mean, thank you for going back and sharing that. And then I think you were going to answer the other question as well. So go for it.
Yeah. So I think a lot of founders, first of all, I think the timing of your first sales rep is important. And a lot of people, try to do it perhaps before they're ready. And so a lot of founders come to me and they'll say, help me write a job description. And some of them can't afford it. But the biggest thing is I'll say, you need to be able to sell yourself because nobody's going to have the emotion, the conviction, the backing of the founder, the risk taker, the person who's, left a safe, secure job to do what they're going to do. Like that story is going to be so impactful, so full of emotion that my question is, why can't you learn to sell? It's not even selling. It's just uncovering a market and helping them solve a problem because you've done it before. And so I think even when you come at it through the lens of I'm helping versus selling, your tonality, your approach, your questions are just that of service. It's like a friend just saying, I got this amazing conditioner. You got to try it. The volume it gives you. I'm not selling conditioner, but I'm coming at it that it was so helpful for me. I've helped others. I'm actually doing you a disservice by not having this conversation. And so I'd say the first thing is, do you need to hire somebody? Is there something that you can be doing yourself, or are you hiding from sales because you're afraid of it? That's the first thing. The second thing, if you deem that, yes, the timing is right, we are at a position and we can afford it and it's, we're good to go, they have to be set up for success. So the biggest thing is, what is your sales process? Like when you're bringing them in and you're onboarding them, what steps are you asking them to take? So that top of funnel, when you're attracting people, if you're outbounding and you're reaching out to them, how are you attracting them? What are they, what channels, exactly what we're talking about? What do they look like? Where do we find them? And give them the tools to manage all the, the discovery conversations. If you're presenting a solution, if you're giving them a proposal, like all the tools, where to find them, the talk tracks, are you practicing with them? And that's from a company standpoint, all your internal processes. But the one area that I see that's more important, is most often missed, is that the buyer's side. How are these buyers buying? And like what, how are they finding you? How are they becoming aware of that they have a problem? So 97% of buyers are in the unaware phase. They do not think they have a problem. They're not waiting for someone to reach out to them. So it's like, how can you move them from that unaware to aware? And that's what we have to understand. So when we overlap our sales process, the internal steps that we take as a company, and we overlap it with the way in which the buyers buy, all of a sudden we create these segments and these overlaps. And that's when we can create activities, whether it's social media outreach, to really meet them where they're at and then move them along the funnel to where we want to eventually close them. But the challenge is if we don't know where they're at, what steps they take, where they're coming in, they might be ready to buy and we're away pulling them back and saying, hey, let's talk about the problem you might have. And they're thinking, I've gotten 4 quotes already. Like, I'm ready to move here. And so that's when you get people that are frustrated because we are adding friction to it. So the big thing is, I would say, make sure you have a sales process. You know internally what you are doing from attracting the right person all the way to closing them. Align that with the way in which your buyers buy, and then create a playbook. So, are you reaching out on LinkedIn? Are you sending emails? What are these emails like scripted out? Are they too long? Is there a text in between? Is there a phone call? When do you do a video? At what point do you, stop the sequence and say, move them to a nurture campaign? All these things to really set them up for success. So I think it's sharing your vision, your strategy as a sales process, aligning it with the buyers, and then training them, and I think coaching them as well. If you can coach them weekly and role play and just really connect with them. A lot of times people are just so metrics focused. And even I have a coaching client now, and every time we get on the phone, it's like, okay, this is what I did last week. I'm like, how was your weekend? What'd you do? What'd you do for fun? And connect with the person. And then they disarm and they trust you. And whatever you're, recommending they do, they're going to do it because they feel that you are supporting them as a whole overall person. So I think the coaching element is very important too, to allow people to feel heard. And even if they're not doing something, there's probably a reason that's holding them back there. If there's a reluctance to pick up the phone and cold call, why? Is they don't have a script, they don't have the number, they didn't get Zoom info, but maybe there's something inside them from grade 12 when they got cut from the hockey team that they're hanging on to that. And if you can hold space for them and get through that, you're going to build a strong connection. They're going to move past that, and they're going to want to, get behind you and work behind you because they feel supported and valued.
Yeah, lots of insights there for sure. I mean, we have, like, for our midterm rental business, we have a meeting every single Tuesday with the team, and then we have one-on-ones, and then, in the afternoon we'll do like a phone blitz where, I think it's important that, as founders, we actually also show that we can do it, right? Because if we can show that we can do it and book the appointment and get the meeting, I think it also helps them trust us and listen to us much more. But I want to go back to one of the things that you mentioned at the beginning, where there's the average is 15 touches or 10 touches. I think that sometimes we forget, right? Where we call and we get a no. Well, a no doesn't mean no forever. It means no, not right now. Maybe you weren't talking to the right person. And so I think that's a big piece. And I, personally, before real estate and before doing this full time, my career was in sales. Not as long as you, but I've done it for about 10 years with large companies. But most of the time, those meetings and those sales were from original no's.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And when you said you've got to take them from that unaware to aware piece, that is huge, huge. And, asking the right questions and covering the problems, actually making sure that that's a problem. Like there's, and I think that comes to more of the consultant part of it rather than the salesperson. That's just, when you think sales, you're not just regurgitating information.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a big one, but definitely, the 10 to 15, was it 10 to 15 touch points?
I mean, it's changed. I heard 13 last. I mean, it's not one. I think the follow-up is where it's at. And people after one, they're like, oh, they're not interested. And I'm like, this person probably gets 200 emails a day.
Yeah.
It's you got to be, and a lot of my customers say thank you for your persistence, because I know in my personal life, I get an email. And then I get an email from the dentist, and then I get the sprinkler guy. And it's like, I really wanted to respond to that, but it's first in, first out. So if they don't call me back, I'm like, shoot, and then it's just, you're so busy. So I know I am the buyer. And so it's all about the persistence and coming at it from the lens of just what you were saying there, Sarah, about, the problem identification. The problem, is this a priority for all of them? Is this problem worth solving? What's the cost of the problem? What's the cost of not solving the problem? But if you can come at it from a standpoint of curiosity, it's completely different, because everyone says, I don't want to be pushy and I don't want to be salesy. But if you're just curious and just saying, look, the reason I'm asking these questions is because I want to make sure that it's a good use of your time and it's a good use of my time. Because there's now 11 decision makers if you're in the B2B space. And so if one of the person or two of the people I'm talking to says, yeah, this is a huge problem, and I bring in the group and it's number 9 on the list, like I need to know that. And so the problem identification is huge. And I feel that when I engage with some of my clients, and it's always, and there's this one lady now, and she's like, what do I do? They're not getting back to me. And, and I just said, and I hate saying this, but it's not what can you do, it's what you should have done, right? And that nobody likes to hear that. But when you don't have problem acknowledgement, you have nothing to anchor your message back to. So when you're following up because they're not getting back to you, it was you pitching a solution to somebody who's not qualified to buy, who's not in your ideal customer profile, who doesn't know that they have a problem. You're just, hey, touching base, checking in. You're the annoying sales rep that you sound and look like everybody else. And so when you don't have a problem acknowledgement, you have nothing to anchor it back to. Versus, hey, Sarah, I'm just curious. Last time we spoke, you were looking to bring in someone by the end of March. Just curious if something's changed. Okay, see the difference? Because I have something concrete you shared with me. And the only reason I know that is because I ask those questions in the moment. And I could even take it a step further. And when I'm having that initial, I'll say, okay, Sarah, if you don't have this person in place by end of March, what happens? Oh, you lose your funding. Okay. Do you think that would be valuable to add in that email as well? So that is genuine urgency because I've asked and uncovered the challenge. And when you don't do that, I'm saying, hey, Sarah, I have any questions with my proposal? That means I didn't do my job. And I'm trying to get you to, come back and maybe close a deal that will never close.
Yeah. And I think, one of the things I've learned in listening to you, I've been taking notes like it's a class. You've been sharing a lot of good insights. I appreciate that. Consistency, yes, persistency. Some of my best clients have been, me trying to contact them for months. And then finally they're like, oh my God, I found all of your stuff in my junk mail, or it was in hidden messages. Thank you for trying. And I think, people need to understand that it's going to take that follow-up and it's going to take that comeback. And one of the skills I've had to really hone on is asking questions. And you mentioned that. And one thing we found is as we're targeting certain sectors and we're finding problems within that one sector, I'll go back to all of the other companies in that same sector and say, well, now we've come up with a solution for this company. Does this look like something that'll work for you? And they're like, yes, actually, that would be great. So, we're coming up to the end of the interview, and I know you have 20 years experience. What would be the one golden nugget that you wish, from the time you left? I know you went over some advice on how you launched yourself into where you are today, but someone who's starting their company, they don't know what the market looks like, they're not sure the success. What would be the very one thing you wish, okay, if I could just remind myself through everything I've gone through, this is the one anchor that sort of threaded me along from launching to successful business.
Mm-hmm.
No pressure.
No, I think about this all the time. But I would say a lot of people are like, it's the techniques and the sales skills. And I would say no, because anyone can learn that, but it's the mindset. And I would say that fear of failure is what holds people back. And so the big lesson for me is that I didn't really know that I was holding back in certain areas of my business. And I think the biggest thing is not being afraid to fail, because it's part of it. And I think the word fail has got such a stigmatism around it, but it's feedback in that I tried something and it didn't work, or didn't work as much as I thought, or didn't get the ROI I thought, but I tried. And so for me, it's like failure is the willingness to try. And I'm so glad that I did it, because now I know, okay, like for you, when you're segmenting your market or trying a billboard versus something else, okay, billboards don't work. I lost 10 grand. Okay, that was a hard lesson to learn, but I'm not going to do it again. But for me, the biggest thing is the moment I can take ownership of the failure and not try to say, oh, the market, oh, my competitors have bigger budget, or they've launched this and it's not, it's an unfair advantage. The moment I can acknowledge that it was my failure, again, back to where we started, it's within my control. I made a bad call. Then I can also be part of the solution. And I'm not pushing it on someone else. And the moment you can do that, you get this sense of I can do anything. Like I made a mistake, but I fixed it and look at the lessons I learned. And I think just that resilience and that mindset, you almost become unstoppable. But so often people are playing too small and they're blaming and they're shaming. And it's like, just own it. You did it, didn't work. And I think those who succeed are those who can pick themselves up the quickest and keep going. It's not, I'm not going to try again. Absolutely, you are. And you're going to fail again, probably. Maybe it'll be $4,000 next time. Maybe it won't be money. Maybe it'll be a reputation. Maybe it'll be a lost deal. But the more you do that, the less stigmatism or the less power failure or fear has over you, because you're like, this is just part of it. It's just part of it. And the more I put myself in these situations, the more some of them will work, but the more some of them won't. And I just think for me, that's when I let go of all that, I started playing a lot bigger and I owned my failures. And then I just went, I've never looked back. So I would say the biggest thing, especially for women, is we get in our heads, we hold our punches, we listen to the brain. It's not really us. And we just stay in this perpetual negative, record on repeat of we're not good enough, or we shouldn't be doing this, or what are other people going to say? Other people, you have to also say, like, who am I going to listen to? The person that's sitting in the 9-to-5 job that's getting a secure paycheck, or someone else who's out there in the ring fighting every risk out there, and that they're one of me. Maybe I'll listen to them because we're similar. But someone who's shouting from the nosebleeds and they're not doing anything I'm doing, I don't really care what you have to say.
I love that. It's very similar to the real estate realm, where unless someone's an investor and they've been doing it and they're, continuously doing it, you don't listen to your father-in-law who maybe heard something from a friend, or the news that portrays all landlords as terrible, or those horror situations. And I want to say mindset is huge. And we've always said that resilience is huge, but in times like this, when times are tough, it is even more important. And you really have to, I think that's more important than working on anything, is that mindset piece, right? Who are you listening to? And if you don't have a lot of people around you that, there's books, there's audiobooks, there's podcasts, there's, so many opportunities to really bring the information in and work on, that resilience and the mindset, because I'll tell you, there's a ton of failures. Like in doing real estate for the last 10 years, there's tons of times where it was a shitty situation. Last year, for many of us has been really crappy, but opportunities will come from these, right? Like Aisha and I are building midterm rentals. Like there's lots of challenges. That's a brand new business, but I think we just got to keep going. And the failure to me is just that challenge and that opportunity to tweak something for their next round. But I'll tell you, unfortunately, I think a lot of people folded, or, decided to go back to their 9-to-5, or gave up in the last, year and a half. It's unfortunate, but I think somebody listening to this right now, keep going, because I'll tell you, you look at like Elon Musk, or you look at like Steve Jobs, or you look at like all those guys that have built something. They failed miserably, probably for many years. They've had businesses that flopped, and at some point you hit it big because of that ability to keep going. And I'll tell you, as entrepreneurs, as investors, as people that are self-employed, like we are a little bit of craziness. We are crazy to be doing this, but I think it's hard in the beginning so that you can have an easier life down the road, right? Like choose your heart. Is it now? Right? Or is it going to be for the rest of your life, just 9-to-5, clocking in, clocking out, and, retiring on fixed income when it's, when you're 65 years old and you didn't live the life that you wanted to when you were young. And now all of a sudden, your health is not the same. Your energy is not the same. So pick your hard. For us, it's hard in the beginning so that we open the doors. I mean, when I first started investing in real estate, I was working retail as well as my full-time job. I was cashing out all my vacation accrued money from my company so I could buy real estate. And that's originally how we started. No vacation for me, and I was working on weekends as well. And, Aisha probably has a similar story as well, where you just have to grind it out for a certain number of times. And yes, it sucks. And there are going to be some times like this last year with the economy going, a little crazy and the rates increasing so much. Yeah, it sucks, but this is going to be the part where I think the people that can keep going are going to come out further ahead than ever before. And the wealth is really created in times like these. Karen, I want to thank you for being on the show. You do have a podcast as well. Where can my listeners reach out, find out more, and tell us a little bit about your podcast before we wrap up?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. First of all, I enjoyed this thoroughly. So thank you so much for the invitation. My podcast is the K2 Sales Podcast. I interview sales leaders, business owners, and anything sales related, mindset related. And they can connect with me on LinkedIn. They can reach out. My website is k2perform.com. And if you have any questions, feel free to connect with me. Happy to connect or answer any questions you may have.
Awesome. Karen, thank you so much for being on the show. It was a pleasure having you on.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening to Where Should I Invest with your host, Sarah Larby. Make sure to listen in next time. We'll catch you on the next episode of Where Should I Invest?